6 spine-chilling tales of sinister secrets revealed in the haunted darkness of night. The shadows dripped with malice in Oakwood Heights, a place once filled with laughter that now echoed with whispers of fear. The sun dipped low, leaving Sarah's heart racing as she darted from the diner, her bones tired, but her mind screamed for caution. The hum of the late-night street sent chills down her spine, each flickering streetlight casting long, sauce-like shadows that seemed to twist and beckon. Distant murmurs of disappearing children flooded her thoughts, pure terror gripped her chest. What had happened to their neighborhood? The familiar now felt like an open grave, her fingers trembled as she pushed through the door of her home. Silence greeted her, heavy and suffocating, as if the very walls held their breath, waiting for something dark to unfold. Late-night shifts meant her kids were asleep, their tiny faces innocent and unaware of the horrors that slithered through the streets they once roamed freely. But the unease clung to Sarah like a damp cloak, growing heavier with every pulse of thunder that rattled the windows. The attic called to her. Memories of her late husband danced in her mind, inviting her to seek solace among his belongings. As lightning cracked overhead, illuminating the dim space, she found a dust-laden box. Inside lay an old diary, crumpled pages hinting at long-buried secrets. Each entry revealed sinister truths about the depths of Oakwood Heights, rituals disguised as community festivals, tales of neighbors once embraced now transformed into something grotesque. Shadowy figures were woven through the letters, flickering like spirits trapped between pages. Sarah shuddered, stomach dropping. Her friends, were they just masks? She read on, her eyes widening with dread as warning notes emerged, urging her to escape before it was too late. An ominous chill crawled over her skin, something was terribly wrong, and the familiar faces she trusted were no longer safe. The storm outside roared, shaking the foundation as if nature itself was in revolt. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The wind howled like a banshee, rattling the windows as terror coiled in her gut. She rushed back downstairs, the diary clutched tightly in her hands. Just as she settled into the eerie quietude of her living room, a chilling scream pierced the darkness. Her heart stopped. In a flash, she was up, her breath coming in rapid gasps. The kids. Panic coursed through her veins, blazing hot with fear. Their beds were empty. Frantic, she scanned every corner, but the house felt wrong, foreign. As she plunged into the tumult outside, thunder cracked closer, almost as if the storm were actively taunting her. Oakwood Heights had morphed into a maze of dread. The shadows twisted and danced, becoming distractions that pulled her focus. Desperation clawed at her as she started calling out their names, voice trembling, hoping to hear their playful laughter answer back. But the streets, once familiar, now felt like an alien landscape. The echoes of her calls melted into the dark, blending into the haunting silence. And she knew fear was creeping in close, wrapping around her heart like a vice. Disturbing encounters with faces she thought she knew pushed her further into a spiral of dread. Were they hiding something? Something that had taken her children? The night pressed in, thick as fog, holding secret truths just out of reach. She stumbled upon photographs in the diner, revealing twisted connections and familiar smiles crossed with ominous gazes. Betrayal hung in the air, sharp as glass. Just when she believed she was on the edge of uncovering the conspiracy, a shadow moved through the darkness, a chilling realization unfurling in her chest that the very heart of Oakwood Heights was a sinister thing, beating to a rhythm of dread. And as she stood at the brink of this revelation, an icy whisper echoed from the very depths of her worst nightmares. What had taken her children? There, in the depth of the storm, she could feel the tremors of the truth pulling her closer to an unimaginable reality. The wind screamed through the streets, a cacophony of terror that drowned out the sound of Sarah's own heartbeat. She felt alive and yet utterly trapped, the very air around her thickening with dread. Each step echoed as if the ground were mocking her haste, daring her to turn back to the haunting silence of her home. Desperation clawed at her throat like a rabid beast. She ran, the rain mingling with her tears, blurring the boundaries of where grief ended and horror began. "Please! Where are you?" she shouted, the words ripping from her lungs. For a moment, the wind stilled, and she thought she heard a soft giggle, high and innocent. Adrenaline surged. She darted down the narrow alley beside the diner, her shoes slipping on the slick pavement. The shadows seemed alive, writhing against the whitewashed bricks as she plunged further into the murky darkness. Her mind raced with images of her children's laughter, light that felt so distant now. Then she saw them, two small figures, indistinct against the gloom. Relief washed over her like a tide. But as she stepped closer, the figures twisted, shedding their sweetness for something darker, a grotesque reflection of her children, their faces painted with rage and whispering words she couldn't catch. Her heart thudded painfully in her chest, a drumbeat of terror and despair. "No!" she gasped, backing away as the figures melted into the wall, laughter echoing back to her in mocking tones. She turned on her heel, fear electrifying her limbs. Escape was imperative. Each moment felt pregnant with ominous possibility, pressing down harder as the storm surged around her. As Sarah sprinted towards the street, she was suddenly halted by the sight of a large shadow looming at the corner. A figure stepped forward, illuminated by a flickering streetlight. The face was familiar yet distorted, one of her neighbors, Mrs. Grady, whose warm smile now looked twisted, skin stretched taut over bone, like a mask of horror. "Looking for someone?" she crooned, voice dripping with false sweetness. The air crackled with tension. Mrs. Grady stepped closer, revealing a crooked grin, teeth like tombstones. "They've been waiting for you, in the darkness." Her eyes glinted with something sinister, as if the very shadows coiled around her. As Sarah stared, frozen by panic, the ground beneath her seemed to pulse, a heartbeat beneath her heels. Every scream, every laugh, every whispered secret returned to her in waves. She thought of the festival last month, the oddity of the neighbors gathering under the full moon, chanting in a language she did not understand. With a jolt, realization struck. The rituals, the missing children, an unsettling connection wove its way into her mind. They weren't just lost, perhaps, they were part of something far more sinister. The community wasn't just keeping secrets, they were complicit in something dark and terrible, fear twisted into a knot of determination. "Where are my kids?" she demanded, her voice stronger now. A low growl of laughter rumbled from Mrs. Grady's throat, but before she could answer, the ground beneath them trembled violently. Cracks spidered across the asphalt, opening like a mouth hungry for darkness. Sarah bolted, panic fueling her speed. Ahead was a faint glow, a beacon of hope, or perhaps yet another trap. She raced towards it, blood pounding in her ears. Would she find her children there, or the truth that would alter everything she believed to be real? Fingers of dread wrapped around her as she crossed into the light. Silence fell, thick and heavy, swallowing her in its embrace. What lay ahead, hope or horror? The answer dragged her forward, drawing her into a reality she could barely comprehend, one where nightmares became flesh, and in that moment, deep shadows lurked, ready to unveil their grip once more, whispering something sinister in the wind that hinted there was no escape from the true heart of Oakwood Heights. What had they become? What awaited her in the darkness? The glow pulsed, a sinister lighthouse among the chaotic storm. As Sarah neared, the light revealed its source, a crumbling archway, half swathed in ivy, leading to an abandoned park. Memories of laughter, picnics, and children's games clawed at her from deep within, but now, all was choked with shadows and despair. The air thickened with an unnatural cold, pressing against her skin as if the park itself were alive, watching, waiting. She stepped through the archway, wary of what lay ahead. The ground shifted beneath her feet, damp and squelching, and she shivered, a cold sweat trickling down her back. "Mommy," a soft, haunting voice called from somewhere deeper within the darkness. Her heart staggered. "Where?" she yelled, panic making her voice ragged. The wind shrieked in response, a fierce roar that sent leaves swirling into tortured shapes. "Play with us." The chilling laughter echoed, cruel and taunting, and it sent daggers of ice down her spine. The familiar voices morphed into grotesque imitations of her children, each syllable twisting into a macabre symphony. She clenched her hands into fists, fighting off the rising tide of despair. Whatever was happening, she had to push through. Before her was a clearing where the trees parted like hands clutching at the sky. At the center stood a stone fountain, dry and cracked, bearing the weight of the stories trapped within its depths. Dried petals scattered, remnants of ceremonies conducted without her knowledge. Sarah approached, drawn by an irresistible urge. She peered into the darkness of the fountain, and her reflection stared back, but it was distorted, a writhing figure with hollow eyes, twisting in agony. She recoiled. "What is this place?" A voice curled around her like fog. "A sanctuary, for the lost," it rasped. The shadow of Mrs. Grady loomed behind her, trailed by flickering specters of her children, faces painted with sorrow and rage. "The games are just beginning. Where are my kids?" she screamed, words cracking with desperation. There was no answer, only soft murmurs of whispered secrets that rolled off the stones like a lullaby, weaving a spell that crept under her skin. Suddenly, a sharp pain lanced through her chest. She staggered back, clutching where her heart thudded violently against her ribs. "The truth is a heavy burden, dear Sarah," Mrs. Grady sneered, as if relishing her anguish. "You were chosen just like them." Adrenaline surged once more as the ghosts of Ivy crossed into her vision, twining around her legs, pulling her towards the fountain. She resisted, pulling against the insistent grasp. Shadows loomed closer, mouths widening into grins, mouths promising secrets most never understood. They had become part of this festering world, where darkness churned beneath the surface, and the spirit of the town demanded a dreadful price. Panic clawed at her, but she had to fight it. In this moment of terror, the whispers coalesced into one chilling directive: "Join us." With a howl of defiance, Sarah broke free, vaulting back into the swirling night, blinding rain drenching her again. What was left behind was the echo of laughter mingled with the wailing of her children, a mournful reminder of the bond that had turned dark. But she could not stop. The tales in Oakwood Heights had just begun to unfold. As she staggered back into the night, driven by instinct and survival, another shadow loomed from the edges of her vision. Would she ever escape this cursed place, or was her fate intertwined with its unspeakable horrors? The darkness whispered again, "Run if you can." The storm continued its brutal assault, drenching Sarah as she stumbled through the thickening shadows. Each drop felt like icy fingers clutching at her skin. Her breath came in ragged gasps, but she couldn't slow down. Not now. Behind her, the terrible laughter twisted through the air, rising like a sinister anthem of mockery. "Come back, Sarah," they sang. It was an echoing chorus, blending with the wind and sinking deep into her bones. She glanced over her shoulder, half expecting to see her children or perhaps the shadows of all those who had been lost before. Instead, she saw nothing but darkness, heavy, consuming darkness. Moving faster, she navigated the uneven terrain, the mud sucking at her shoes with each desperate step. The once familiar paths of Oakwood Heights now warped into a labyrinth of uncertainty. The further she ran, the more the park changed, each tree morphing into twisted shapes, like grotesque sentinels watching her flee. "Help me." A voice broke through the fog of terror, a child's voice, sweet, innocent, desperate. It stirred something deep within her, blending hope with dread. Was it really her child? Or a cruel illusion meant to ensnare her? "Please, I'm scared." The voice called again, tugging at her heart like a hand reaching from the grave. Without thinking, Sarah followed the sound. Her heart thundered in her chest as she pushed through the underbrush, branches clawing at her arms, pulling at her clothes. "Emily? Jamie?" She cried out, but her own words felt swallowed by the hungry void. Then she stumbled upon a clearing, one she recognized though it was different now, tainted by something unspeakable. A small wooden swing set, now rotting and crooked, creaked mournfully in the wind. It looked like it hadn't seen a child's joy in years. Had her children played here? "Mommy." The voice morphed again, this time tinged with urgency. "Come play with us." Her pulse quickened. She looked around, searching for any sign of them. In the dark corners of the clearing, she caught glimpses of shapes familiar yet odd, silhouettes of her children intertwined with shadows. "Stop it!" Sarah shouted, feeling the walls of her sanity tightening around her. "You're not real. Why don't you join us? Play with us forever." The laughter crescendoed, a haunting cacophony. The figures swirled, drawing closer, their faces shifting each more distorted than the last. Sarah turned to run, but the shadows closed in. The laughter morphed into shrieks as they lunged for her. She stumbled back, suddenly standing before the fountain again. It loomed, a gaping mouth filled with obsidian darkness. There was nowhere else to go. The water, once dry, now bubbled with a malevolence that matched the horror in her heart. She could hear whispers, her children's voices mixed with those lost in the park's depths. "Join us in our games, Mommy." Forever with no other choice, she hesitated only a moment, grappling with the nightmare of her options. The shivering figures lurked close behind, their icy breath settling on her neck. She could feel the weight of their sorrow, the crushing despair of their endless longing. "Join us," the shadows hissed, their voices a syrupy blend of temptation and threat. "You know you want to." And just when Sarah thought she might sink into that abyss, she caught the barest glimmer of warmth, the fleeting notion of hope to cling to. But was it worth the price she would have to pay? The darkness thickened. The pressure grew unbearable. She could feel her children's whispers dancing just beyond her reach, luring her closer to the brink. The question echoed in her mind like a twisted drum: what price would she pay for their salvation? On the cusp of decision, the ground trembled, and the fountain rippled ominously, a wave of shadows washing over her. "Choose wisely, dear Sarah," the chilling voice filled the air, "time is running out." Desperation clawed at Sarah's chest as the shadows coiled around her. She could feel their cold tendrils tugging at her mind, weaving in and out of her consciousness. The echoes of laughter filled her ears, merging with the whispers of those she had loved and lost. The air felt thick, heavy with the weight of their plea, a siren song that threatened to drown her. "Why won't you play?" The voices grew more insistent, merging into one, a twisted symphony of longing and need. Branches swayed ominously above, as if the trees themselves were leaning in, eager to witness what would follow. She shivered, every instinct screaming at her to flee. But where could she run? The paths had become a tangle of nightmares, every step fumbling further into the maelstrom of despair. The once vibrant park transformed into a graveyard of lost hopes. She could still feel the warmth of those fleeting thoughts, the laughter of her children at play, the sweet smell of summer afternoons spent together. And now? They felt more like fading echoes. "Mommy!" The call pierced her heart, sharper than the icy air. "Help us!" For a horrifying moment, it felt as if she could see them, a flicker in the darkness, just beyond the edges of her reality. Were they waiting? Was it really them or another cruel trick? She clenched her fists, walking the tightrope between hope and madness. "Enough!" She screamed into the void. "I want to play your game." But her voice faltered, and for a second, doubt crept in. Maybe she could just appease them. Maybe if only for a moment she could find them, hold them close again. The fountain erupted, an unholy rush of thick water surging over its aged, cracked stone, mirroring the swirling shadows. "Join us!" Their voices turned sweet, almost melodic, like childhood lullabies woven with sinister undertones. She could feel the edges of her resolve eroding, the desire to reach out for her children overwhelming all sense. Every whispered forever danced hauntingly in her ears, curling like smoke. Just as she felt the pull to wade into the swirling depths, the shadows hesitated. Something shifted in the stillness, a cracked voice cutting through the chorus of desperation. Sarah, it wasn't the voice of her children. It was another, a dark, rasping tone that felt hollow. She squinted against the darkness, heart racing. It was the figure of a man, emerging from the depths as if conjured from the shadows themselves. His eyes glowed with an unearthly light, piercing through the oppressive darkness. "Stay away!" she shouted, terror mingling with fury. "I want to let you take them." He stepped forward, the shadows behind him swirling as if alive, as if bound to his will. "I speak the truth," he rasped. "What you seek isn't found in the echoes of the past. There is a path, but it is not what you think." The laughter faltered for a split second, replaced by an unsettling silence that felt like the calm before a storm. "A path?" Sarah croaked, uncertainty flooding her mind. "What kind of path?" The man's eyes gleamed with a dreadful knowing. "One that leads beyond the darkness if you are brave enough to walk it." Before she could respond, the laughter returned, fiercer than before, drowning out any sense of clarity. Shadows prowled, tightening their grip, preparing to snatch her away once more. "Time is running out, Sarah," the man warned, his voice almost drowned by the cacophony. "Choose. But beware, not every decision carries the weight of delight." The shadows surged, and for a heartbeat, Sarah felt her fate hang in the balance. Without warning, the ground split beneath her. She stumbled, teetering on the edge of the darkness and the man's blaring gaze. "Your choice matters," he bellowed, as she fought to regain her footing. In that instant, she realized the truth: the shadows had taken much more than just her children. They were feasting on her will, feeding on every ounce of her fear. The laughter crescendoed into a chaotic noise, drowning her in a suffocating wave of sorrow, and then, just as her vision flickered, illuminating a faint glimmer of what seemed to be freedom, she heard the final whisper, "Choose wisely, dear Sarah." The ground trembled, and she was consumed by darkness. What awaited her on the other side of the abyss? Would she dare to face the path ahead? The darkness wrapped around Sarah like a heavy blanket, smothering her senses. She couldn't tell where the ground ended and the void began. Panic gripped her heart as she struggled to breathe, her gasps echoing loudly amidst the silence. What had happened to her? The last thing she remembered was teetering on the edge. Now she felt adrift in endless black, her thoughts raced, each pulse thrumming in her ears like a deafening drum. The man's voice lingered, sinister and foreboding. A path beyond the darkness, but at what cost? The laughter of her children, now a haunting melody, wove in and out of her mind. Were they here? Waiting for her? Or were they just another cruel mirage designed to lead her deeper into despair? With a sudden rush of defiance, she forced her feet to move. "If there's a path, I'll find it," she shouted into the emptiness, her voice trembling but filled with a flicker of strength. The shadows seemed to recoil, creating an opening in the obsidian veil. She pushed forward, hands outstretched, searching for something, anything solid to cling to. The terrain shifted underfoot. It felt wet and strange, the earth squelching as she stepped. The sickly sweet stench of decay hung in the air, making her stomach churn. "No more games," she whispered, shaking her head as if she could drive away the thoughts that clawed at her sanity. A dim light flickered in the distance, barely noticeable at first, but it called to her like a distant star. Hope surged through her, and she moved toward it, each step a battle against the despair that gnawed at her. The laughter faded to a distant echo, replaced by the crackling sounds of her own frightened breaths. As she approached the glow, shapes began to emerge from the murky depths. Flickering images of children danced around the light, familiar faces entwined with shadows. "Mommy!" they cried, the joy in their voices cracking and twisting into something hideous. "Join us!" But Sarah's heart hardened instead of softening. "You're not real," she shouted back, forcing herself to remember the last moments before their lives were stolen. This wasn't them. It couldn't be. The light intensified, illuminating a grotesque scene. The man stood there, eyes blazing with a malevolent fire. "You cannot escape your choices, Sarah," he bellowed, a mouth twisting into a twisted smile. "They're here because of you." "Shut up. You don't know anything," she screamed, rage overcoming her fear. "I didn't choose this." With a flick of his wrist, the shadows surged, creeping closer with malicious intent. She could feel their cold fingers trailing over her skin, as if trying to peel away her resolve. "Every decision has its price," he taunted as her breath quickened, her pulse racing. "You'll pay dearly for your denial." In a desperate frenzy, Sarah's hand brushed against something solid, a weathered branch, long forgotten, half buried in the mud. She grasped it as a weapon, feeling its jagged surface, a lifeline in this suffocating doom. "Get away from me!" she screamed, brandishing the branch like a sword. "Your defiance will not save you," he growled, advancing. But this time, fear transformed into determination. "I want to play this game," she shouted, but the confidence seeped away as a new realization struck her. What if this was her only chance? What was at stake? Then, a faint whisper skimmed her consciousness, a fragment of a memory, shimmering amid the chaos. Find the truth in that fleeting moment. Clarity pierced the fog of horror. She had to confront this twisted version of reality. The laughter of her children faded to a whisper, replaced by the resounding truth that echoed in her mind. She was not here to merely escape, she was meant to reclaim. "Enough!" Sarah cried, flinging the branch forward towards the light. The shadows recoiled, the man momentarily blinded by her defiance. In that split second, she turned on her heel and bolted toward the flickering glow, her heart racing ahead of her feet. But would she find the truth waiting ahead, or would the darkness drag her back forever? The confrontation loomed as the glow flickered like a dying flame, leaving her to wonder if she had the courage to face whatever lay beyond. Would she grasp the truth, or would her past consume her once and for all? The light enveloped her like an embrace, but it felt dangerously deceptive. As Sarah plunged forward, the laughter morphed into anguished cries, twisting the light into a strobe of memories and regrets. "Mommy! Help us!" echoed around her, a cacophony of desperate pleas trapped in time. She clamped her ears shut, urging her feet to keep moving. With every step, tendrils of darkness lashed out, snatching at her ankles and pulling her back. It felt as if the very shadows conspired to drag her into their depths, whispering secrets of guilt and failure that threatened to drown her sanity. "You can't escape." The man's voice sneered, a haunting melody in the chaos. Sarah's heart raced as she fought against the pull. The branch still clutched in her hand felt heavier with each passing moment, as if it were a reminder of her own fragility. "This isn't real. This is just your game," she yelled defiantly at the consuming blackness, wishing her words could pierce through the fear. Glimmers of light danced in her vision, illuminating a path. She pushed forward, knowing she couldn't turn back. But as she neared the source of the glow, reality shifted. The laughter transformed into crying, the faces of her children morphing into grotesque specters, their eyes wells of despair. They grasped at her, shadows reaching for shadows, calloused hands made of sorrow. "You left us, you promised." They whimpered, their ghostly voices skipping like stones, slicing through her resolve. "No!" she screamed, flinging her branch toward them, desperate to sever the connection. "I'm here. I'm fighting for you." But they dissolved with each effort, replaced by horrible silhouettes that congealed once more into the twisted form of the man. "You can't fight what you've already lost," he taunted, eyes glinting with malicious glee. He stepped forward, the light diminishing around him. "Your past isn't gone, Sarah. It's here with you. Hidden from the sunlight, yearning to be acknowledged." Sarah felt the truth of his words seep into her consciousness. Memories of guilt slashed through her, the screams of that fateful day, the missed chances, the call she never made. Each one a thread pulling her back into darkness. In a sudden surge of desperate realization, she dropped the branch. I did leave you. It was my fault. The shadows seemed to fester at her admission, swirling with ferocity. That's right. He hissed, reveling in her vulnerability. But a fire ignited in her chest. But I'm here now. She shouted, voice steadying. I will face you. I will confront the truth that haunts me. Suddenly, the air crackled and shifted. The light began to expand around her, pushing back the shadows, illuminating the path ahead. Hushed whispers filled the air, gentle murmurs coaxing her forward. For the first time, she felt warmth splintering through the darkness, igniting hope. A doorway formed from the luminous haze, swirling like sunlit fog. She stepped toward it, every heartbeat a rallying cry. I'm reclaiming my truth. Her voice rang through the void, echoing with strength. As she crossed the threshold, a chilling laugh resonated behind her. You cannot escape the consequences, Sarah. You will find what you've been searching for if you dare to look. The doorway slammed shut behind her, plunging her into an unfamiliar realm. The air hummed with uncertainty. Was she truly free, or just entering another layer of despair? Questions swirled in her mind like ghosts. Was the light real? What awaited her now? She steadied her breath, the scent of new earth enveloping her senses. The warmth of hope battled the cold grasp of fear. There it was again, a flicker of laughter, echoing. Not a cruelty, but something warmer, like teasing from the past, still familiar. Before she could question it, the shadows loomed at her sides, twisting with malevolence. Sarah, they whispered, beckoning her to come closer. Remember us, she trembled, staring into the unsettling forms. With the dim light suffocating the edges of her new world, she had to choose. Would she stand and confront them? Or let the darkness consume her once more? As she hesitated, something moved in the corner of her vision. Something lurked just beyond the light, breathing softly, waiting. What waited for her there? Would she dare take a step toward it? Sarah hesitated, her heart pounding fiercely against her ribcage. The soft breaths in the shadows quickened, tickling her senses with a cold dread. Every instinct screamed at her to retreat, but the laughter, a tender, haunting echo, pulled at her like the current of a river. Don't be afraid, the whispers beckoned, morphing into familiar tones, her children's voices. We just want to play. A chill ran down her spine. Those were not the playful sounds she remembered, but something far more sinister twisted within. The shadows stretched toward her, fingers of gloom reaching, twisting, yearning. She couldn't tell what was real anymore. Stay back! She shouted, her voice cracking, feeling fragile as glass. The words barely left her mouth before the first shadow lunged, snatching at her with a grasp like ice. She stepped back, realizing in horror that the laughter had escalated to fitful cries, perhaps once joyful but now soaked in a sorrow deeper than she could bear. Mommy! They wailed, their faces pushing through the dark veil, their eyes wide with desolation. Help us, you can't leave us waiting forever. The suffocating heat of guilt rose within her, almost suffocating, blurring her vision. She stammered as a rush of guilt hit her, slapping her like a cold wave. I'm trying. I'm here. Not enough, the man's voice filtered through, a twisted grin apparent even from within the shadows. You think your presence can undo what's already been set in motion? Redemption isn't free. The shadows recoiled slightly, as if disturbed, but then lunged at her with renewed fury, and Sarah had only fear to fuel her. She swung her arm wildly, hoping to push back the darkness. Her fingertips brushed the edges of a shadow, then recoiled, sparking an awareness that these were mere projections of her anguish trying to pull her into a deeper void, but beneath the fear, a flicker of resistance ignited. She thought of her children, their laughter, their smiles, once a beacon of comfort. You're strong enough to face this, she whispered to herself, pulling that strength to the forefront. It wasn't just you, it was all of us. I won't abandon you again. With a loud gasp, Sarah stepped forward into the whirling darkness, willing herself to confront her fears head-on. Tell me what you want," she demanded, a flash of anger burning through her uncertainty. "Show me." The shadows convulsed around her, and for a moment, the cries halted, replaced by a suffocating silence. Then, in its place, images erupted into view, scenes from her past, each one a jarring reminder: the day she lost control, the moment she relinquished trust, the faces of those abandoned like autumn leaves swept away. "Do you see?" the man hissed, his tone dripping with malevolence. "They haunt you. They want justice." Suddenly, the ground beneath her felt alive, pulsating with something dark and ancient. The laughter twisted into something grotesque again, turning her memories into a carnival of horrors. The faces of her children morphed, glittering in the shadows, their features warped into sinister grins. "Mommy, come play," they sang, their voices hollow like echoes in an empty room. "No. I won tea," she screamed. "I'm not afraid anymore." But fear clawed at her, twisting tight around her throat, choking off her next words. Just then, the darkness thickened, congealing like fog, consuming her small shreds of bravery. The weight of the shadows grew intolerable, as if the very air was suffocating her around the throat. And then she saw it, a flickering light, pulsing like a heartbeat from somewhere above. Hope mingled with dread, a siren-esque call beckoning her back to empowerment, blurring the lines of memory and reality. It flickered again, almost like an invitation. Was it freedom, or another trap? She steeled herself, made a decision. "I'm coming," she shouted defiantly, taking a step toward the light. At that moment, the laughter erupted into a cacophony of wailing, filling the air until it felt as if it might crack under the weight of sound. As shadows surged to reclaim her, she felt the pull toward that bright beacon of light, unmistakable. What would it reveal? Would it finally lead her home, or into deeper darkness than ever before? As she lunged, everything seemed to freeze, an eerie silence blanketing her senses. The light flickered one last time, and then, what awaited her in the maze of shadows? Would she brave the unknown? Just as Sarah lunged for the light, the shadows erupted around her, pulling her back with icy fingers that clawed at her skin. The laughter morphed into anguished cries, echoing through the darkness, each wail gnawing at her mind. "No!" she screamed, the word escaping her lips like a plea for sanity. "I'm not yours to take." The flickering light pulsed once more, vibrant and alive. In that moment, she caught a glimpse of something, a garden of vivid flowers shimmering in the glow, an image so stark against the darkness surrounding it that it pulled at her heart. Were those memories of love? Of joy? But the shadows grew thicker, wrapping around her limbs like chains. It felt as though they crawled beneath her skin, igniting her fears, scars of loss and regret. "You don't belong to her anymore," the voice sneered, dripping with contempt. "Stop. You have no power over me," Sarah shouted, ripping herself from the grasp of darkness. With every ounce of strength she had left, she propelled herself toward the light. The moment she crossed the threshold, warmth enveloped her. Colors burst into life, rich and vibrant, deep greens and shimmering golds. Sarah stumbled forward, gasping as her eyes adjusted. This cavern of beauty felt unreal, too bright to be true. "Mommy?" A voice resonated, a sweet, soft song. She whipped around, and there, bathed in the light, were her children. Their smiles radiated warmth, their faces unharmed, untouched by darkness. "Mia! Ethan!" Tears streamed down her cheeks as she reached out for them, but the moment she did, they froze. Their expressions morphed, melting back into those twisted shapes she'd seen in the shadows. "Mommy, you should have come sooner," Mia mumbled, her voice breaking like shattered glass, echoing back into whispers of malice. "What have you done?" Ethan's innocent face transformed, the laughter replaced by a haunting emptiness. "No. Please," Sarah begged. The garden shrunk around her, petals wilting and falling away as if the life was being siphoned from them. The laughter turned sinister again, melding into a sickening harmony of distorted memories. Your love isn't enough, Sarah. You let us down. Each word pierced through her heart like knives, twisting her gut with guilt and despair. Fight back. Something inside her shrieked, and just like that, her resolve strengthened. This isn't real. This is just a nightmare. The shadows crawled toward her again, creeping in like a tidal wave threatening to reclaim everything. With a newfound determination, she turned to the echoes of her children. I will not lose you again, she declared, her voice strong against the roaring wails of anguish. The light pulsed fiercely as if it felt her strength, mirroring her fight against the encroaching darkness. Help me break free, she cried into the chaos. We can be whole again. As the shadows groaned, twisting in confusion, Sarah pushed forward, willing the light to envelope the darkness that lurked at the fringes of her mind. Images flickered in the background: happy mornings, laughter echoing through the halls, bedtime stories wrapped in warm embraces. Let me in, she shouted into the void. The shadows seemed to recoil, momentarily halted by her intensity. You think you can change the past? You're too late. The man's voice seethed, laced with an edge of panic. I'll never give up. She lunged again, reaching for her children's spirits, trying to tether them to her. But the shadows surged, a maelstrom of darkness, splintering the garden of light around her. Then everything froze, yanking her back into quiet chaos. The ground trembled beneath her feet, and the light flickered violently, a dying star sending out one last call. Would the shadows drag her back into despair, or could she grasp the light before it faded for good? The darkness tightened its grip as Sarah braced herself for the final push, the laughter turning into a dizzying storm of noise. Would she reclaim her children, or was she destined to remain trapped in this haunted void of her own making? As the tremors beneath her feet intensified, Sarah felt her resolve flicker like the fading light around her. The laughter morphed into screeches of torment, a cacophony that beat against her soul. Fight, her heart urged, a resounding echo in the depths of despair. No. I want to let the darkness win, Sarah roared, her voice ringing out against the relentless storm. She felt a wave of warmth swell within her, igniting a fire that pushed back against the shadows clinging to her. The visions of her children Mia and Ethan swirled invitingly, but she remembered their twisted faces, distorted by sorrow. This was not her love, it was a trap. No more games, she shouted, tears blurring her vision as the edges of the garden crumbled, petals wilting at her feet. Each flower fell with a soft thud, like whispers of hope slipping away. With renewed determination, she ripped herself from the shadow's grasp and ran toward the flickering light. It pulsed defiantly, and she could see shapes taking form beyond it. The laughter of her children mingled with the whispers of deceit. "Mommy, come play," echoed, but this time it felt like a distant memory, a reminder of innocence now lost. "I will find you," she cried, her heart pounding fiercely as she lunged forward. As she crossed the threshold, the garden exploded into vibrant hues, swirling around her. Colors radiated like fireworks, each bloom a reminder of the joy she once held. And there, in the center, stood Mia and Ethan, their forms shimmering with life. "Mommy," they called, and their voices were clear, pure, untainted by shadow. Sarah's heart surged, but she maintained her composure. "You're real," she exclaimed, racing to them, but the remnants of doubt still lurked. "What's wrong?" she gasped, feeling the weight of the darkness pressing behind her. Their faces softened, but shadows flickered behind them, weights threatening to reclaim their innocence. "You have to believe, Mommy," Ethan urged, reaching out. "It's not too late." "No. You're lost. You don't know what they'll do," she screamed, grounding herself. The man's laughter echoed ominously, and the silhouettes twisted around her, coiling tighter like a noose. "I believe in you," Mia shouted, a hint of fear in her voice. "Don't let them take us again." That spark, that defiance coursed through Sarah like electricity. "I am your mother," she bellowed, and with each word, the darkness recoiled as if burned by her fierce love. "I will not let this happen again." With every ounce of strength, she pushed the shadows away, creating a barrier against the tide creeping closer. The laughter faltered, the shadows hissed, fizzling at the edges of the light. "You think you can change what you've done? You can't escape your choices." The man growled, his voice deep and rooted in malice. "But I'm here now," Sarah shouted, her heart racing. "And I'm fighting for you." Suddenly, she felt a surge of energy flowing from her heart. With a fierce yell, she thrust her hands forward, channeling every ounce of love and hope into the air around her. The glow illuminated the night, blinding and beautiful, as the darkness shrunk back in terror. "Together. We rise together," she commanded, calling upon Mia and Ethan's spirits to join her. As they reached for each other, energy crackled through the air, weaving their essences into a brilliant tapestry of love. The connection forged between them surged and exploded into radiant light, flooding the remaining shadows, consuming everything in its path. Screeches filled the air, the shadows twisted and melted, losing coherence in the brightness. With a final desperate scream, the man lunged toward the swirling light, trying to reclaim his hold. But it enveloped him, swallowing his malicious intent, dragging him back into the void from which he'd come. Freedom pulsed around them, bright and intoxicating. As the last remnants of darkness dissipated, Sarah felt her children close to her, their laughter now genuine and filled with warmth. "Mommy!" they cried, their voices sweet as honey, echoing through her heart. "I'm here," she whispered, tears of joy streaming down her face as she finally embraced them. They melted into one, their warmth suffusing her being, wrapping around her like a comforting blanket. They had triumphed. They were whole again, free from the grip of the past, free to start anew. As light surrounded them, the horrors of Oakwood Heights felt like a distant nightmare. Together, they stepped forward, leaving the shadows behind forever, stepping into the dawn of a new beginning. "Let us go home," Sarah whispered, her heart finally whole as they ventured into the sunlight, where laughter would echo in the air once more. The dawn spread its golden fingers out across the landscape, washing away the night's terror and promising a day filled with light, a new life that invited them to thrive and heal together. It was over. Finally, it was over. Now, if you love this thrilling conclusion, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel. Don't miss the next exclusive stories that keep you on the edge of your seat. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and show your support. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this intense ending. Let me know what you think. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support means everything, and only true fans understand how vital your actions are to keeping the stories alive.